Hey folks, thanks again for joining us here at the Vinyl Brotherhood. Today's album's a little different. We're going to review something that's like a tribute to a particular 90s alternative rock band. Just sit back and relax, and we're going to get right into it here very shortly. In 2018, the band Out of Controller famously sang that they'd given up on Weezer. That sentiment seems to be more and more common these days, doesn't it? I myself haven't necessarily given up on Weezer, but I'm readily coming to terms with the fact that they will likely never again be more than but a mere shell of their former selves. And I, from here on out, will just try to enjoy their output for what it is. It's pretty tragic, and I don't want to harp on the story of Weezer, which has been speculated upon ad infinitum. But for the 2 or 3 of you that might not be familiar, let me just summarize it for you quickly. Weezer used to be really, really good, and nowadays they're not quite as good. So, enter Billy Cobb. Actually, you know next to nothing about this guy, except that he's recorded several albums, and 2 of those are written in the style of LA power pop legends Weezer. This is the second of those records. It's called Zerwee Part 2, as you can see. And maybe you're wondering why this review isn't about Part 1. Well, the original Zerwee is just an EP, and it kind of reflects the stylings of Weezer's bass sound, so think like the self-titled Blue album. And if you must know, it's really good. So I chose to review Part 2 for 2 reasons. It's a full-length record, and it emulates and expands upon the sounds of Weezer's Pinkerton album, as well as their legendary unreleased project, Songs from the Black Hole. I just found that a little more intriguing, and I can't wait for you to see what Billy Cobb has cooked up for us. So, what do you think? Should we give this a spin on the record player? Does this look vaguely familiar at all? Yeah. Art continues on the back. And I actually know a little Japanese myself, but I've been too intimidated to really get into the kanji, so no clue what that says. But let's go ahead and talk about this record. When I stumbled across Billy Cobb's Zerwee records at my local shop, I noticed a quote on Zerwee Part 1's shrink wrap. It read something along the lines of, "I got tired of waiting for Weezer to make a good album, so I made one myself." First, that made me chuckle a little bit, but then I got a little depressed. But obviously, I just had to see what these albums were all about. And I didn't have to do too much listening before being assured that the titles, the claims, the marketing were all completely on point. He really did it. And since we're focusing on Zerwee Part 2, I'll just confirm that this music has it all. Sad sack power pop jams about nostalgia, anxiety, and being a massive simp. The performances and the production are all refreshingly raw, just as the self-produced Pinkerton was back in 1996. But yeah, I mean, everything you love about classic Weezer has been replicated here to great success. So I'm talking about like the extra crunchy power pop chords, the punchy drum kit, the goofy background vocals, the nods to Japanese culture, and so on. I mean, mere minutes into Bargain Mart, I already had, a huge smile on my face. Yeah, on an album full of catchy choruses, The Ocean in Her Hair is extra memorable. It opens with a twangy acoustic guitar, kind of reminiscent of Only in Dreams or Surf Wax America. And it kind of leads us into the verse, and then it does this whole quiet verse, loud chorus thing that I mostly accredit to the Pixies. But it's a very dynamic tune, and it's currently my favorite song on the record, and it's a really good representation of what can be discovered on this 45-minute thrill ride. And I'm also fond of Billy's performance here as he channels the Rivers Cuomo energy, or lack thereof, if you will, to give us like a really charming and appropriately awkward deadpan delivery before belting out that huge chorus. Track 3, Orihime and Hikoboshi, is a noteworthy track for a couple of reasons. Strangely enough, it's kind of melodically based around the perennial Christmas carol in the bleak midwinter, a personal favorite of mine. So yeah, that's an interesting decision, but not entirely so, as Rivers Cuomo often drew from classical music in his early work. And it's nice to have a song that features a really slow, dirge-like tempo that we enjoy on classics like Only in Dreams or Devotion. I Wish That I Was Younger is pretty much what I signed up for going into this album. It's an upbeat, borderline punk pop song akin to Why Bother from Pinkerton, and it presents the, always relatable, often revisited theme of nostalgia and regretting how one throws away the years of their life. For whatever reason, it just repeats a single verse over and over, which I couldn't help but feel a little cheated by. But I forgive that because it's totally a jam. And after the album's interlude, which is likely inspired by the multi-part harmony of the Black Hole Countdown, we get a song about Blockbuster Video, the old video rental place that we all know and love, or knew and loved. The dynamic range Billy is working into all these songs is exemplary of not only the defining characteristics of Weezer's best work, but really just great, well-written pop rock in general, and definitely something I'd like to do better in my own writing. So Blockbuster Video is a good example of this, but I'm mostly mentioning it here because it just made me feel really old. So yeah, I got a reaction from me, and I agree, Billy, everything is moving so fast, and it terrifies me. But anyway, let's keep going. Billy borrows a concept from Weezer's longtime Sunshine reprise, or reprise. I've heard it both ways, but we'll go with reprise, on the song Pepper's Ghost, where the song builds up to this climax where the choruses of earlier songs on the album are all sung together in harmony. And it's really well done, and you think that'd be a great way to close out the album, but the final track, Ludo and Hoggle, really surprised me. It gives us several of the album's best moments, including an amazing final chorus where Billy just kind of goes ham. And we go out on this really thoroughly satisfying note that got me feeling like I had just been on a journey. And as we approach the end of today's Vinyl Bro journey, I need to point out a couple of nitpicks first. So the main issue that I take with this and similar projects is that artists don't always successfully emulate the sound they're paying tribute to without slipping into parody, or even sometimes, getting close to straight up copy and pasting. And as we established, Billy Cobb doesn't really have a problem with achieving the classic Weezer sound, but there are a couple moments on the record where he practically lifts melody straight from Weezer classics. So I heard moments from Tragic Girl and Come to My Pod, just to provide a couple of examples. And I can understand that there's definitely a challenge in lovingly reproducing the essence of someone else's work. But the album really shines when our friend Billy is providing new Weezer songs instead of reminding us of Weezer songs that have already been written, if that makes sense. The album is roughly 45 minutes, but somehow it tends to be, I couldn't help but feel a little exhausted at the end. And I think that may be because most, if not every song on this album features, if not one, two large dramatic standout moments, which isn't necessarily a problem in theory, but I fear that that kind of thing can mess with the pacing a little bit. Like when you construct a music playlist, you kind of need to slip in some deep cuts in between like the hit singles to let things breathe a little bit, lest it starts to feel like too much of a good thing maybe. Of course, most of us would argue that too much of a good thing is better than not enough, but I don't want to start rambling here. So let's go ahead and take Zerwee back to the couch so I can send you all on your merry way. I think I'll have to give a listen to Billy Cobb's non-Weezer inspired work because I thoroughly enjoyed this album. And I can really appreciate that for the most part, it's not just a reminder of Weezer's heyday, but it's also a fun, dynamic, and well-written album in its own right. It's definitely worth a listen regardless of how you feel about the source of inspiration. And I mean, I have a nitpick here and there. It's by no means a perfect record, or even better than Blue Album, Pinkerton, or Songs from the Black Hole, but it'll definitely scratch that itch if you approach it with an open mind. And all things considered, I feel pretty good about ranking at a 7.5. I recommend maybe listening to Oceans in Her Hair or Bargain Mart if you'd like to sample a couple of tracks. And if you are a fan of Weezer, it couldn't hurt to give it a shot. I'm sure you'll be pleasantly surprised. So Now that we're wrapping everything up, I just want to encourage you folks to do the usual liking and subscribing and whatnot. And of course, say hi in the comments. I'm really looking forward to seeing what y'all have to say. And that's about it. So thanks again for swinging by the Vinyl Brotherhood, and we'll see you guys back here very soon.